like, see, the thing is, I think that same kind of okay, it will be a much more brutal approach to getting people to follow the rules of the game.
Mhm.
It'll definitely be a lot more direct. It'll be a lot more serious. But I still think that the exact same thing can be achieved through the DualShock analog controllers that give you a physical response to what's happening, and to psychological situations created through imagery and sound.
Okay.
The sensation of pain can be mimicked using those given tools already without something like an electrical shock, which is what I'm guessing is what you're thinking.
Hold on. The vibration of the DualShock 3 controller is very easy to ignore. If you're really focused on the game and it starts vibrating, your brain is so efficient at just filtering that stuff out.
That's exactly what'll happen with anything else. If you're so set on a task and you know that you're not actually in danger, you will ignore the stimulus, even if it is a painful stimulus.
But this stimulus, the way that pain has been designed physiologically in our bodies as we've evolved, it's impossible to ignore. That's why it's so unpleasant.
It's perfectly possible to ignore.
It's designed to be not ignorable. You know what I mean? It's supposed to get your attention immediately.
No. Think about cutters.
That's a different thing altogether. That's a different...
No, that's not that different. Like, the use of pain as something else and the ignoring of what a painful experience is. Like, even paper cuts can be turned into the... Okay, go ahead. You're going to say something.
Cutting, that's pleasant. That's a pleasant experience. If you cut with a sharp knife, it is just like a little pinch. It's the same kind of thing like a sexual experience with getting a piercing on the nipple. Right?
Yeah.
That's different. That's complexifying the pain-pleasure duality again. It's going into a different topic.
Okay, give me an example of pain that can absolutely not be fetishized. That can be utilized.
I was speaking with a woman not too long ago at the university, and she was pregnant at one time. But she told me that she once had a toothache that was 10 times as bad as her entire pregnancy experience. The nerve that goes right through the jaw, right next to your brain, it was unbearable to her. She just wanted to die when she had it. I mean, I've never had a toothache like that. But that just gives me the idea. What if you just had a peripheral that's wireless connected into your tooth, and it goes kind of deep into the nerve, and you could use it just like a filling. On regular times you could chew. It's just an implant, and you just have this filling, and you turn it on and connect it to your game, and it'll blast you with pain if the game calls for it, right? Maybe you'd even be able to have the control of how much pain you can tolerate, because it's all relative, right? I mean, you don't want to give somebody the ability to completely turn it off, I suppose. Maybe make it public exactly how much pain you're feeling.
That is something that's actually really interesting, because a toothache I don't think is easily ignorable just because of what toothaches mean. I mean, just about any other feeling. I don't know.
And the thing is...
I don't know. When I go to the dentist, I never get the anesthetic. I've gotten kind of used to the drilling into
the dentists are too good. They're too good. Nobody needs anesthetic these days. They've got too good tools. They're too sharp, too precise around the nerves. My teeth are sensitive, though. I always get the anesthetic. I'm such a coward.
No, I have like super sensitive teeth too. I just like whatever. I don't like the drooling afterwards that comes with the anesthetic. It's just like, oh.
Yeah, but you gotta think. Come to think of it, really, this tooth idea is probably the best way to implement this.
You never mentioned this tooth idea before.
Well, I didn't have it until now.
Yeah, I was thinking that you were going to have something much more elaborate or complex, but a wireless tooth implant would actually be a really smart way to implement this kind of idea, and actually something that could be implemented. Although that would be like the worst. I would like to have a pain that I could actually enjoy if we're going to have a pain implemented experience.
Yeah, and I mean...
Because that would be a really awful experience, to get shot and then to feel it in your tooth.
Yeah. It's the worst way you could possibly have it. You know, from a physiological perspective, pain is the most...
I think at some point you would just kill the nerve by overstimulating it.
I don't know. Well, that's one of those things that is one of those kinks that you got to work out. If you don't try, you'll never learn.
Good word choice.
Kinks?
Yeah. Can you imagine a tooth fetish coming out of this?
Yeah, I suppose.
Toothache fetish.
What I was getting at just a moment ago is that if you look at it in a physiological perspective, the pain stimuli or unpleasant stimuli, it makes sense that it's the most intricate and varied collection of stimuli you can have, right? Because as a creature evolves, it is evolutionarily beneficial to have a distinct and profound understanding of the dangers in your environment, right? So you have all these different ways to feel pain, to feel fear, to feel disgust. These unpleasant stimuli are just helpful, just really helpful. You can, I don't know, whether it comes from potential tissue damage, like if something's cutting you, you feel that. Something tastes really bitter, you feel disgust or something like that, or you see something scary coming at you. That's a general fear. All of these will paint an elaborate picture of unpleasantness.
Man, I'm just thinking about this idea of having like not necessarily just a tooth implant, but a jaw implant that allows you to taste like blood.
Yeah, well, that's all at the same time. You get this medium for all of these sensory inputs that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is an idea you didn't mention before, so.
Damn, I didn't want to mention too much because I thought I'd convince you, and now I did.
No, you haven't fully convinced me. I still think that the content and the way in which it's utilized is much more important than whether or not we have the device. I think that the device would be really interesting, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's quite possibly the most interesting periphery I've heard of ever.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know it might seem disheartening to think of it this way, but you do agree that we're more attuned to pain than pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I guess that's why you're not arguing with me on that point. But
we agree on a lot of things in this. The only thing that we really disagree on is whether or not such a device is necessary.
Yeah, well, it's not necessary. I don't think it's necessary. This kind of sounds like kind of a mad scientist thing, doesn't it? Like an evil guy is just trying to make people feel pain in their games all over the world.
Yeah, but like I actually totally support that idea. And if this was actually available, I would probably get one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that the market of like just thinking about how the market works for gaming would be a really limited market, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea. Yeah, you did convince me.
I did.
Mostly because of the tooth thing. If you had said the shock thing again, I would have been like, no way. But the tooth thing actually works.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because that is a pain that I don't think anyone can ignore.
Yeah. And not to kick a dead horse already, now that I've won this conversation, I'd like to expand on just how elaborate this pain can be. For example, I mean, you would also agree that pain is probably one of the most tangible, unpleasant experiences you can have, right? If you have it, you can't ignore it, especially this tooth one, right? But can you imagine the unpleasantness that comes through association to the anticipation of this pain?
Yeah.
You get fear, you get, I don't know, all sorts of things. The fear and anticipation could surpass the pain stimuli itself, right?
Yeah.
So it's just all this potential comes out. And like I said earlier, that if you expand the spectrum in the negative, you can expand it in the positive at the same time. Because after having gone through a reasonable amount of suffering, you would feel all the more relieved and all the more accomplished after having done all this, right? You will, and in the meta sense, that you will be able to show on your Facebook or whatever, your social networking systems, that I have been able to tolerate all this pain more than anyone else. You know, it's a whole new thing of achievement. And it's going to be all recorded. You're going to have points and pain tolerance levels, and like you mentioned before, distaste tolerance levels when you're you know, the tooth releases some kind of gunk in your mouth.
It's like, oh God, what does that taste? Who cares about that smell?
It's like there's a list that tells you how many things you've tasted and what you've tasted and what you prefer to taste. That's the best
periphery anywhere. Anyway, that's the best periphery I've ever heard of. And it would actually really be interesting if you could like just really surgify the mouth area for game experiences, so that you could just put a direct link to the nose, because the taste and the smell senses are really closely.
Yeah, though it's all in the area.
Yeah. Just do a whole bunch of things in there. I think that's a really good idea, actually. Yeah. I think that's an idea that's got legs.
It's quite a jump, though, right? Because remember how before our tactile feedback was limited to the extent of vibrating controllers, and you feel the buttons. That's what everybody refers to when they say tactile feedback, right? And then they complain that iPhone doesn't have that kind of thing. But get this, physical pain right in your tooth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tactile, like, I think that tactile thing hasn't gone nearly far enough yet. Like, there's so much more that needs to happen with how touch is used in games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because like the use of pain through the tooth, rather than making it pain of touch, it's almost psychological pain. Like, it's in that same general area. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have a relationship to a body part in the same way that hitting your arm or cutting yourself somewhere or scraping a knee, it doesn't have that bodily relationship to something.
Yeah, it could be indistinct, or it could be really sharp. Like all the variations you can have. Ever chew on some foil and then ever feel that cold sensation when you bite into something? The nerves can feel all these crazy things. And sometimes even when you have a bad toothache, I heard from this woman, is that it just penetrates through your body. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
I think that the teeth are super sensitive. They can experience all sorts of different things.
And then you're in that general area, you could manipulate all sorts of other things. So if we expand in that direction, it could mean so much for gaming. Eventually we'll bypass all of the nerve systems altogether and maybe just get some electrodes in the brain. And then,
I mean, like, with nanotechnology, if we could, I was reading this thing. It's like from the 1990s, earlier stuff, science fiction stuff, of having nanobots that could attach themselves to the nerve endings. And then give you direct feedback to everything in your brain, and everything could be monitored. And I think that something like that, as science fiction-y as it is, would be an interesting potential possibility. I think it is possible to interface with the brain.
Yeah, they've had some pretty not so great success so far, but we'll take it one step at a time. You got to make it practical. So
right now we'll go to the internet.
Well, yeah, but we're not talking about this stuff specifically. We're just trying to really relate it to the games, right? So, but in any case, I'll think of this some more, thinking about what other games it could be used for other than just shooters, because that's kind of boring. I don't really play shooters that much.
I think it could be used for any game in which there is a goal.
Yeah, adventure games.
Potential to fail.
Yeah, can you imagine that implemented in something like The Last Guardian? And stuff. Yeah. Not only would you have the psychological anguish of losing your animal or whatever, because I bet you're going to lose that to that bird-dog thing eventually. But you'll also have the physical pain.
It's going to happen at some point.
Can you imagine in concert all the things, emotional and physical, together, and it'll all be...
it'll be exquisite.
Yeah. It'll all be superimposed in this elaborate painting of unpleasantness.
It'll go so much further than just visual pleasure that we started off with in the expression of experience that human beings had, like, cave paintings. Like, it goes so far beyond that emotional experience to actually be able to have. I mean, I think that if you've got a pain receptacle tooth, you could also use the same thing to create pleasure in the mouth as well.
Yeah, it could be some kind of
this could get really Freudian too.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe we should...
Okay, we should just cut off here.
We'll cut it off here, and we'll say goodbye. This has been the Dual Analog Podcast. We were talking about pain in video games, and would you really want to have that? My name is Abel.
Yes. This is Agnes.
And we'll say bye-bye now.